Hey everybody, it's time for our devotion here during Holy Week on Maundy Thursday. I don't always dress like this around the house, but I'm just about ready to go out and record the Easter service. So my mind is kind of there. It's really a bizarre thing to do, to record early, but hope you enjoyed the service. Be sure to tune in and get us on Facebook or through YouTube on Sunday at 9:30 Pacific Daylight Time. So we continue our study in the book of Mark, looking at the things that Jesus did during the last week, the last days, kind of day by day. And today, on Thursday, the text begins with this kind of ominous story about, that Judas had already set it in his heart to betray Jesus, and the fix was in. On Thursday, and this is in Matthew chapter 14, really beginning at verse 12, where he talks and prepares the Passover meal Jesus does with the disciples. And you know the story. They meet in the upper room, and Jesus announces, "One of you will betray me." And in Mark's gospel, there's this kind of indignant sense with the disciples. "Surely not I," they say. This kind of this mood of that it's unimaginable to them that they would ever do anything wrong or untoward. And actually, they're all going to fail Jesus in one way or another. And it's that arrogance and that pridefulness that really comes through in this story, and it's something that they can be redeemed from. But I think it shows for us to always be asking, "Is it I, Lord?" instead of "Surely not I." That we're aware of our own sinfulness and our own capacity for betraying our best intentions, best purposes that we have in us, and to go a different direction. That kind of smugness really has no room in spirituality. So then Jesus shares the bread and cup, and he shares it even with Judas. And I've always liked that he knows the fix is in. He knows Judas has done it. Knows that Judas's own actions and decisions are going to have consequences, but Jesus never shuts Judas out. Jesus doesn't exclude Judas from the table. He gives him the bread and the wine. And I've never been able to figure out, at least for me, I've always appreciated the Lord's table as an open table, open for everyone. If Jesus didn't exclude Judas, who am I to exclude anybody from the Lord's table? But it's communion offered to all. So then after they all receive the communion, then they go out to the Mount of Olives. They sing some hymns, and Jesus predicts that all of the disciples will scatter in the time of need, at the moment of truth. And Jesus and Peter then makes his famous declaration, "Even to the death I'll follow you, and I won't deny you." And Jesus tells them, "Surely 3 times this very night before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And all of the disciples affirm their vow that they will follow Jesus to the death. It's easy to make some of those kind of promises. It just sounds good. To the death I'll follow you, whatever it takes. It's easy when death is ambiguous, but when it comes creeping up on your doorstep, you have a way of reevaluating your priorities, and sometimes those commitments that you make with the passion in the moment dissipate under pressure. And so that's something to be looking at too, about our commitments and the things that endure under pressure. And so then then Jesus asks the disciples just to stay awake with them. They promised, we'll stay with you until the death. And then the next thing he says, all right, just stay awake with me for a while. And they all fall asleep. Jesus keeps trying to wake them up and wakes Peter up. Can't you stay awake with me even 1 hour? No. They promise, we'll do anything to the death, but then they can't even stay awake and be alert. And remember in chapter 13, Jesus was always talking about the need to be alert for your moment to be a disciple, to stand up, to do what's right. And so they fail at that. And then there's this great moment with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane where he's praying earnestly. He feels the pressure. He doesn't want to die, looking, is there any other way? But your will, not mine. And he's somebody who's not going to give up his integrity. He's someone who's going to not back off of anything that he said or believed in the face of persecution, in the face of people who would kill him. It wasn't that he was setting out to die, but knew that that was the consequence of his integrity, of his actions, of his belief in the new kingdom that he wanted to create. And so then into the garden crash the soldiers with their clubs, and then there's this betrayal with a kiss, this kind of intimate sort of act and close bond of friendship, and this deep betrayal by Judas. And Peter, he is so incensed by all of this, and that they come at Jesus, and he tries to defend Jesus and cuts off the sword, cuts off the ear of one of the soldiers. And so it's just always kind of interesting to me, cutting off his ear. It just means that he missed when he tried to chop the guy's head off and only got his ear. But Jesus tells him to put away his sword. He doesn't want anything to do with violence. In fact, it's odd that Peter has a sword, because Jesus earlier in the gospel had told the disciples not to carry any weapons. So carry no sword. And so Peter has one, and then they arrest Jesus, and all the disciples are frightened, and they all run away. Every one of them disappears. And then at the very end of the chapter, there's this odd little thing. So all the disciples run away, and then it talks about there's this other guy who is a young guy. It's the Greek word for it's kind of like a young whippersnapper. He's just an odd word. And so this young guy runs away, and somebody grabs him by his cloak, and it falls off, and so he runs away naked. There's this great little story about the naked dude, and you kind of think that has to do with this moment of full exposure, if you will, of the failure of the disciples, of people who wanted with good intentions to keep commitments, but in times of pressure failed. And it exposes their weakness, their sinfulness. They're all kind of shown for their humanness. But the story doesn't end there, of course. No one is beyond redemption. All of the failures get redeemed. Peter gets to proclaim his love for Christ even after the denials. And there's this suggestion that this young whippersnapper, this young naked guy who runs away, is the person who greets the women at the tomb, and now he's dressed in white in chapter 16. The same word that was used to describe him kind of as the whippersnapper is the same word that's used in chapter 16. So we're not beyond redemption. So there's a lot to kind of percolate over there and meditate on this Monday, Thursday, about our commitments, our failures, our chance at redemption, our chance to include people into our lives and not be the one to shut the door on them, as Jesus welcomed even Judas. So a lot to think about and contemplate on this Holy Thursday, and pray that you will do that, and it will be a blessing to your life and add to your ultimate Easter celebration on Sunday morning. Until next time, see you later.